Hallo, hallo. Yeah, welcome to another episode, or actually the first episode of Klangteppich from the new studio. I have a guest with me today, which is...
Hello, my name is Casper, also known as Grasduinen.
Yeah, and we thought we switched the program a bit. Before we had more like club-oriented sets on Klangteppich, but actually it's a radio show. So we should also talk about some background information. And that's what we're going to do today, but a bit more. I have prepared some questions. Kaspar prepared some questions. We're going to talk them through a bit. And then to also have some music and extended period of music, we will have also our own period where we will just play some tunes, talk about it. I will tell you a bit about dub techno today, and we also had a bit of an intro song of dub techno, which is actually made of us too. And maybe begin with one question, because why is it here? Who are you? And what are you doing here, dude?
Thank you. Well, my name is Casper. I'm mainly live artist. So I like to play with synthesizers live. And also part of the collective, which is where I met Harry. And when I saw I was invitation for a show, I read about the idea of minor notes of Klangteppich. Feeling restrained by genres. I don't really feel restrained by genres, but I find it very hard to understand. Louder, so you can hear us better.
But you can, like that we can hear.
Okay.
Oh, good, sorry.
Anyway, so I'm not really trapped by genres, but I don't really understand them anymore. I do feel that music I like shares like a similar kind of feeling it takes me to. And then I thought maybe we could have a little talk about that, play some music. And otherwise we work together as Haka. Which was this first, track selection.
Yes, nice. I think that's a good start for the show. Maybe we just listen to the rest of the track and then continue. Okay, that was actually an excerpt from one of our live shows, because we have a new project. To set the tune for the rest of the show, I will already play some other tracks that are a bit in line with what's gonna come. Not many, focusing on thinking here. And in this radio show, I thought it's also nice to give opportunity to guests to ask questions to me, because it's about equity. So Kaspar also prepared some questions,
Yes.
and can start with one.
Yeah, and the first one is actually like you asked me, why am I here, dude? But why do you do radio shows in the first place? Like, why Klangteppich? Exactly.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, in general, I think it's a nice platform to also do something unconventional. I think while we were not talking in previous shows, I play music I would usually not play in a club or somewhere else. Also, it's a nice way to connect. I mean, I think in every show except for one, I had guests, and then you can show each other some music, connect on that, have a conversation around it before it. Usually I have a drink with the guests afterwards, with some even dinner, like you today. Thanks for inviting me. Yeah, that's the main reason. And it's a community-driven radio, and I think that's what I like. I mean, now I'm part of Liminoid with you, but when I came to Groningen, that was the first thing that hooked me up on doing music again, because before that I was really not doing much music. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right.
Okay.
And but you say you were not doing much music, and before, like, you came to Groningen?
Before I came to Groningen, I was actually living in Vienna, and I think, it was not really my city. I lost a bit the connection to music there and to techno scene, and after Corona I came back to the Netherlands and didn't really feel it. I didn't really feel the electronic music scene, so yeah. I was happy. I was welcomed here with open arms. I think back in the days, by Gert Jan, I remember. He welcomed me to relate. He liked it. I think he liked just somebody playing vinyl and being stuck on one style.
Cool.
Nice. What we are listening to is actually Carrier. What we're listening to is Carrier from Rhythm and Sound, which will lead us a bit to the music we will explore later when I will talk about music. But before we are really digging into that, I also have another question for Kaspar, because Kaspar and me actually started a musical project lately that's called Haka, and I'm curious, what other projects are you thinking of, and what is really inspiring you? What is driving you? What plans are there?
Yeah, so next to Haka, I also practice my own live sets a lot, and I also have planned a performance as Gaaf with my girlfriend, where she also plays like visual synthesizers, video synthesizers, and we do a live act together, so that's quite cool. As in like musical goals or this kind of stuff, I don't really have that so much exactly in that I want to do this specific project, that specific project. I mainly just do whatever comes up. So like, for example, Haka came up, then I do that, and then
It was more opportunistic.
Yeah, the whole thing is very opportunistic. And then the goal for me is more to like kind of master my instrument and be able to play in, any kind of situation. And the more different situations I'm in, the more this strengthens me. Yeah. So yeah, and I don't know. I think so. It's more based around that, and more about also this constant, like trying to improve your craft, let's say, and which you then express through various ways.
So it's also the learning. Goodbye. Bob just left us. Yeah.
But definitely the learning aspect of it, and also like to make music for me is quite meditative. So it's like also in itself is worthwhile doing. And then basically what I try to get to more is that I'm able to get into this meditative state of like kind of syncing with the thing I'm making as close as possible.
Okay. That's interesting. Yeah. I have the feeling in life performing with you that also, I can relate to that. Now you say you want to just sync with something, get meditative. You can really explore a sound in its depth and work with that for a long time. Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, and it's also kind of the music I brought for today is stuff that, I mean, all the stuff I brought today is within a similar vein, but it's not exactly the same genre, and I think also this feeling is genre transferable, let's say, or And it's interesting. I have a friend who is actually into prog metal and to stoner and this kind of stuff, and he is chasing that same feeling, though the musical style, let's say, is very different. But how do you say? We can still talk about like repetition, droney kind of stuff, this kind of things.
Yeah, I mean, I have a background in playing in bands with like an electric guitar, and then I can relate to that also. You have this like kind of trance of repetitive notes, maybe, which I got less into since I don't smoke weed anymore. But yeah, everybody has their own methods. No, but yeah, cool. Yeah. Nice to hear something about you and your plans.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to be part of your opportunistic musicality. And me, I don't know. I'm very happy that came along. I was a bit surprised by that. Let's be honest. I'm always hesitant to make music with other people. There were these jam sessions for a long time where I was invited and never went to. And I'm also not sure if I will. I think I'm super hesitant to make music with others, and yeah, connecting with others musically is something I like a lot, but it's also difficult for me, especially when it's really about producing and making something live. Yeah, so my future plans, I'm not sure. I would like to sit down and do some albums in like a conceptual way, like a dub album, one hypnotic album, one really break album, but I need time for that.
Oh.
That's more it, I would say. And I would like to invite other people to the studio and just do a day of producing together.
That's also cool that you, because then you still have this musical collaboration, but still you have a kind of different process than this. Like jamming is very fleeting in a sense.
And then you can have also a bit of a concept and a thought behind it and say like, okay, today we make 2 songs and they're like this, and see if you get there. Maybe you don't get there.
That's very cool.
Okay, I think then I have a question. The next question was, do you have a track that you like, but you think I don't know it yet?
Yeah, so I brought Acroul, and the record's called Spiegeleffekten. It's this, and then the track doesn't have a name, but it's track 2.
Okay.
And Acroul is this producer from Vienna. He also released on this Viennese label, and otherwise I know extremely little about him. But I found him when I was looking in Discogs, and then someone had also this, and then since it was not, I don't know, I just picked it up.
Nice. Yeah, the idea with this question is that I force people to show me new music, so it's I have an incentive.
Also quite optimistic.
Extremely. The whole show is opportunistic. The idea is also that we have a few questions that are recurring. One of them will be that people need to show me new music, and then there's also another song questions that will come later that I asked to Kaspar, and that will also be recurring. If you want to. liked it a lot. Reminds me of Kaylee Malone. It's an organist, I think, from New York. I don't know.
Yeah. No,
Might
I
be.
know her, but
What
I
was
don't know
that?
if she's from.
What was that again?
This is Acrul, and the EP is called Spiegeleffekt.
Okay. Might note that for my ambient selection. Liked it a lot. No, really deep. Yeah, this is where I hand over to Kaspar for about the next 40 minutes, and Kaspar can tell a musical story of his own. And I hope you guys enjoy. Something we realized already is next time we need bar hockers, for sure. Standing here is super awkward.
up is Drift Machine. They are duo, also from Berlin. Everything we've heard till now is from Berlin, coincidentally. The Drift Machine are sort of my major modular heroes. They do these amazing live sets, and we'll listen to their track Stare in the Air, kind of these loopy vibes. I hope you enjoy.
experience a state of euphoria for a period of time that didn't end for me. It didn't last for minutes or hours, but for months.
So this was Minilog with Endlessness, a Swedish group to break the Berlin vibes. I used to listen to them like a lot, and actually their Ableton commercial got me into synthesizers in the first place, so they hold a real special place in my heart. Unfortunately they are split up, but yeah, very good music. Next up is more in the vein of a show, some more modern takes on dub techno by Konduku. Enjoy. listening to Sage's Prophecy,
Spaghetti.
otherwise known as Bowl of Spaghetti by Desert Storm, and before that we listened to A Suit with, I don't remember the track now, but it's a very nice producer. It goes well also with Conducto, and they have produced together as Concert. This was kind of my musical story in which I tried to show that you can find a feeling of rest and stillness with all kinds of music, though I realize that it's mainly loopy, repetitive stuff I've done before. I hope you enjoyed.
I don't know, some stuff was also not so loopy repetitive. At one point I thought it's real percussion in the beginning. Yeah, whatever. To transition from this, I have a question, one of the recurring ones, because I have this dilemma I usually face, or often, and I think about what if I die now, today, and then sometimes I have this feeling of like, yeah, shit, if I'm dying in a car and I was just listening to the radio, actually the song that I've just been listening to is complete bullshit, like some pop song, and that gave me this idea of what would actually be the last song that I would want to listen to. And I think in my head I have this kind of ranking, and therefore I want to ask you, what would be the last song for you to listen to?
Yeah, and when you asked this question before, I didn't really take it in this list kind of view, so I didn't make one. Because my idea is more that you should always try to listen to music you like. I almost never listen to radio, except when it's like artists playing I love, but in the car I'll play, stuff from SoundCloud or my phone. So yeah, and then I feel that any track in that moment should, fit your mood and your vibes and all this kind of stuff to, die happily in that moment. So, it's not really one track, also because it depends very much. Like if I'm walking on the street, I'll listen to different stuff than sitting at home. But still, in both cases, if the meteor strikes, I should be okay facing my death, listening to that.
Yeah, okay. I don't know. What I take from that is I should dominate music more often and not give in to other people's ideas too much. Maybe. But also sometimes you learn some good music from other people, like today.
But I mean, like how do you say it? Like
surround yourself by the right people.
Yeah, exactly. And if people play shitty music, then try to show them what you like. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That question will recur. We'll come back. Thanks, I think, for the musical journey.
But before we come back, you had a list of 5, right? So
a list of 5?
Yeah, you said.
You mean a ranking?
Or the top track before you died. Oh. What's your current one right now?
Currently, I think there's a Katharina Barberi track. It's called Safaf something, which is pretty far up there. I think Carrier. We listened to that earlier today, actually, would also be one of them. And then something untypical that I have for years is Keep On Lying from Tame Impala, from Launerism. Yeah, it has been on there for a while. But there are more. There are too many.
Well, it's good
it's
that
a
you
ranking.
have a recurring radio show to slowly share.
Yeah, maybe I should start the next one with one of these songs.
Yeah.
Maybe one unexpected one. Yeah. Okay. Thanks so much for, I think, the 40 minutes of music. I think I will maybe just transition, to the next 40 minutes of music, in which I'm going to tell a bit about dub techno. It's not the first time that dub techno ends up on this show, but I've never talked about it. And I think having some background info is also nice. And we're going to start with something classic. I think if you Google dub techno, probably all the music nerds will be like, oh, that has been said 1,000 times, but I'm going to repeat it. Then you will end up with Mark Enestus and Moritz von Oswald, who formed Basic Channel and Rhythm and Sound. And we are listening to Rhythm and Sound at the moment. And I will guide you a bit through the roots of dub techno, and then we will also explore some newer stuff and what's going on at the time. But first of all, enjoy. And some might call me poor, but I don't have so much resonant sound and basic channel on vinyl. But some Maurizio, we will listen to it soon. Next tracks, I will continue with some basic channel stuff. Okay, all you music nerds can correct me, but yeah, some background info. The artists we are listening to were kind of the pioneers of dub techno, using very simple methods. They just had a 909, a Prophet, some mixers, and the very renowned dub delay, the RE202 from Boss. The Space Echo. They made some revolutionizing music in the 90s. Yeah, they started this from Berlin out, managed to grow some labels, some attention, and I think this developed in a complete movement. And while the rhythm and sound stuff is really more dub oriented, but also not so reggae oriented, more like really deep delays. With basic channel, they went more in a club kind of direction, while Moritz von Oswald then himself went in a real club direction, and one could almost say a bit cheesy compared to the original sound. And we'll also listen to that in a minute. Okay, I'm gonna make a transition now slowly to some more modern stuff, but I think you can still hear the roots. And yeah, after that we will turn to some stuff that's maybe not so recognizable anymore, but still has some dub elements, and I think it's interesting how that developed over the years. And that's Idealist, with a song I don't know, but it's on this vinyl. Here, if you wanna buy it. I think it's very club oriented. We will move back to something maybe a little less club oriented from Startup. For a long time when I bought it I did not know who was the artist, but there was a star printed on it and dub written, so I will show it to you afterwards. And then I discovered it's actually a label and an artist from Frankfurt. It's great stuff. So enjoy. Okay, that was Startup. And now I want to turn to something a bit more recent. Actually, from my favorite album for a long time now, I would say. In terms of listening through a techno album, there are not so many I can listen through and think, wow, great. It's Anima Mundi by Vril. And I think that's a good example of how dub techno can be revolutionized and changed. And I want to play for you guys the track House. Not like house music, but the German word house. And I think when that came out, the first version I think was on Forum, on Giggling, but then he did a rework for the Delzine album. And yeah, that's just a massive and great and deep track, and I think there are not many people who can transmit so much emotion through dub music. If I can find it. Okay. Yeah. I think this is massive. This is just so melancholic and big, and we will continue with that. And if you thought it couldn't get more dark, actually there is a sub-label of Giggling. Giggling mainly known for their cheesy house, which is great. No insult to Giggling, but they had a sub-label called Forum, which I think is way greater. And there are rumors that Vril is also involved in this project, I'm pretty certain, which is called Zum Goldenen Schwarm. Yeah, and I will just play a song of them called Die Wolke. Yeah, we are still listening to Zum Goldenen Schwarm. This is Aufgang 2. Here we go, also on Forum. Yeah, what a banger. Whereas Kaspar describes and Nicolo described the previous one as this one is more club oriented, a real banger. Enjoy. We now finally understood how a Pioneer mixer works. They even have delays. No, that was a bit of a skip through, dub techno. I think in the future I will showcase more. Now we started at the beginning and ended somewhere in 2015. But there's more, of course. But that for the future. And now we're gonna turn back to some conversation.
Yes, and then as Harry prepared questions, I also prepared a question. We already talked a bit about how you prefer to, or how you are a bit hesitant to jam with other people. In general, music in general has both a very introspective side, in the sense that if you don't talk, you hear it better. But on the other hand, it's also a very fun thing to share with people and to talk about and this kind of stuff. I wanted this for you. Is it more of a, like a introspective or like a extrospective thing? Like, how do you feel about that?
Wow. I looked at the question before and I did not really think about an answer. But I think there is no one or another to it. Though I think whenever, even when we talk about music, there is some talking and there is a certain part of our vocabulary and language that can cover up and also fulfill the purpose to talk about it. But you can never grasp music fully with words. So actually, I think the introspective part of it, just listening to it and maybe sharing sounds, like manipulating sound and an instrument like a synthesizer, has a very social aspect to me without talking. I think, for example, when we jam, like there is not much talking going on.
No, true, but it is then like a more of a social situation. I feel like we hang out, even though you know, you sit in a room and you don't really talk to each other. So that's kind of true.
I hope the bells are recorded. Actually,
yeah, it's excellent. We are close to a church. Also, in one of my tracks, I was very confused for a bit because I didn't remember
Sounds
bells.
Good.
But yeah, maybe they can do a Relay Radio sample pack at some point.
Then we should shut up. Perfect. Then we have one bell at least on there.
All right. Excellent.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Fitting what I played, I think, was what we also did. I mean, we are also inspired by dub, and let's end the show by one of our recent jams, which is part of a live show. It's an extract that's also a bit dubby in a way. I think some parts that these newer versions of dub techno represented with more noise and heavier sounds will come back in here.